2. What's up, guys? Good to see everybody again for another episode of the Blind Pig, courtesy of BGObsession.com. Happy to be here, see everybody again. So if you guys are listening, please feel free to join the board, jump on, have some fun, mix it up. Quick intros for those watching on YouTube. Top left is John. He also hails as Boone. Bottom left is Mark. He hails as Ohm. Bottom right is Bob. He hails as Neophyte. Top right is Paul. He is the Canadian Hog, and I am Derek. You can find me at Silent Threat. So those are all of our names on the board. Jump on, please engage. We enjoy good conversation and having fun. What we don't enjoy having fun doing is drowning our misery like in the game we did on Sunday. John, you made a post about how, I think it was you, John, about how you were actually emotionally attached for a change. So I am curious if you could elaborate a little bit of that, about how it actually hurt more than in the
how's
past.
that working out for you today?
Yeah. Well, I was one of the guys last week that, even though I didn't believe it, I confessed I didn't really believe we would win, but I went on record saying we would have a narrow win. But yeah, I think it is different now, because before it's not that I expected anything different, because I think one thing that Mark's done a really good job of is saying, look, we shouldn't expect a lot this season. And the fact that Dan Snyder's gone, that's a win. We're Super Bowl bound in a sense, with being Dan Snyder free. But I do think I did have the hope going into that game that we would somehow pull it out of our ass, despite the first 2 weeks where we kind of won, but it was a little sketchy at times. So it just stung a little bit more for me personally, because I just am rooting for these guys a lot more than I have been. It's hard not to root for the owner, and we have some really good players, some guys that play hard and want to win. And Sam Howell, especially, that probably was what drove that thought the most, is that look on his face after like the third interception. He just looked so upset with himself, and I just wanted to give him a little hug, a little dad hug. And I'm sure he's fine now. I actually saw his press conference, I think today, and he had bounced back and he was ready to go for Sunday. But yeah, it did sting a little bit more. I don't know if that was just me or if other people felt that way.
Well, I went into that one fairly confident that we were going to be overmatched. My disappointment, yes, it did sting, but it stung because I thought we were further along. I didn't expect to see us lay an egg and really not be competitive. It looked worse towards the end. I did go back and rewatch it just to make sure that I wasn't just being purely emotional about it. But we were, and it wasn't, unfortunately, just on the field. We had problems at every level. I thought we were out prepared on the coaching level. I thought we were out efforted by and large throughout the game. I thought when we did do something good, we instantly shot ourselves in the foot. I thought we were going to be further along. So that's the part. And we can get into the specifics, but my overall impression was 2-1. If you had told me we'd be 2-1 after just losing to Buffalo, I'd say, okay, what's next? Now I'm concerned that what we saw on Sunday, if that carries over again to Philly when we're punching up again, I'll start to be more concerned. But I'm still, John, just to touch on what you said, I'm still holding myself back a little bit because we are a Dan Snyder free zone, and this whole season was about seeing what we have on the field, coaching and talent wise, and our quarterback. All of those things are up in the air right now, more so than they were a week ago.
And I didn't hurt over this game, and it's not that I'm less emotionally invested, I think, than anybody else. It's just, I just didn't, my expectations, granted, last week I very brazenly on this same podcast picked Washington to win. And I'll be blunt and tell you, I believed we had an opportunity. I didn't think we would win. When the money hit the table and I had to pick for BGO's Pick'em contest this week, I'll cop to it. I picked Buffalo. Right. Even though last week I said I thought we could win, and I did think we could win. And you know what? I still thought we could win right up to that first interception in the fourth quarter. At that point, it was still 16-0. It was still technically a 2-score game. And Sam Howell has kindled a fire of belief in me in 3 football games that I looked at it and went, you know what? We're a couple of magic plays, and let's face it, between he, McLaurin, and Dotson, we have the ability to create a little bit of magic. But I'm like, we're a couple of magic plays away. Part of it, Harry, I lied. Part of it stung, and I'll tell you what stung, and that was the defense. Yes, we were tired when we gave up 14 of those points in the fourth quarter, and 7 of the points came to the offense. But it isn't like Sam Howell gave the football away deep in our own territory. All of his giveaways were midfield or close to our end zone. We made them work. I mean, they had to go a distance to score every single time they took the ball away from us. And the image of Chase Young jogging after the quarterback, man, that one hurt. But overall as a team, I went into it feeling like we were playing with house money. If we won, hey, great. The expectations go up. But I think I said, somebody asked about expectations for this game. What happens if we win? I said, well, the expectations go up. If we don't, the expectations don't change, because I didn't really expect to beat a legitimate Super Bowl contender. How many times have they been to the AFC Championship game in the last 3 years? Twice?
At least.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a good Buffalo team. We came up wanting. Ooh, ah.
It's a good Buffalo team, Bob, and I hear exactly what you're saying. But at the same time, for me, I'm not necessarily hurt at the fact that we lost. I'm disappointed. Disappointed in the sense that I want to see this team slowly but surely start closing the gap on some of these upper echelon teams. Sure, we can hang with the Arizonas and the Denvers of the world, but I want to see some sense that we are getting closer to being able to compete with some of these teams. And I saw no evidence of that on Sunday. And I don't know, to me, in some ways, maybe Ron Rivera has run his course, so to speak, in Washington. We are flatlining with them. It doesn't seem as though we are progressively getting better and better and better. Sure, there were some signs of improvement towards the beginning of his tenure, but over the last year or two, I just see this team flatlining. So a lot of disappointment for me in that regard.
Bingo. That's where I am, Paul.
During the game, we were all in chat. I actually felt like I was one of the people that was not upset. I wasn't upset during the game.
You weren't. I'll back you up there, Derek. You were good.
I mean, going in the first quarter, or the interception with the touchdown to, Gabe Davis, that's a one-shot play that leads them to, that we should have all seen coming. I mean, every team knows that when there's a turnover, chances are they're going to take a shot. And they did, and they exploited us. But to still be within 2 scores going into the fourth quarter, I didn't feel like I had any belief that we were going to win the game, but I didn't have any belief we were going to win the game going into it. I'll tell you what pisses me off, and it's been stewing on me since the game has ended, is that every glaring problem that we saw with that game were things that not only us 5 on this podcast, but multiple fans have been asking about. What are you going to do about coming into this season? Sam Howell's on track to get sacked 107 times this season. Now, obviously, that's inflated, but that's 19 sacks through 3 games, 9 of which happened this past weekend. And we didn't really invest in the offensive line. Am I saying it was all the O-line's fault? No. But Sam Howell has a propensity to hold the ball a little longer than he should, sure. But he's also getting his head caved in every third time he touches the ball. So my struggle and my frustration, it wasn't in the moment, because I never believed we could actually win that game. It was that we all saw this coming from 2 million miles away. And Quan Martin might end up being a really good. I'm not even talking about the first round pick, you know. I'm
Right.
not talking about Forbes, because maybe there wasn't a guy there that you wanted to take. I'm talking about the fact that Quan Martin in the second round, when we have seen the just glaring holes along our offensive line, to not address it at all until a fourth round project who is a tweener, it's frustrating. That's where it pisses me off. If we had just gotten beat by Buffalo, I would have expected to just get beat by Buffalo. We didn't just get beat by Buffalo. It was self-inflicted in errors and wounds that kept us in the game. Yeah, I was frustrated. We might have been frustrated with the defense a little bit, but again, it was 16-0 going into the fourth quarter. I think every person here, if we got asked in the offseason, week 3 against Buffalo, you've only given up 16 points going into the fourth quarter, would you take that? I think all 5 of us would say it 10 times out of 10, yes, please, I would take that. Because we have to imagine that something would have happened offensively to make it matter. You know?
So before we get into the nitty-gritty of some of the stuff we saw against Buffalo, we heard a lot about it being a measuring stick game, just like we heard the year before. And I think I can explain last Sunday in one word in terms of being a measuring stick: shrinkage. There was a lot of moisture that during that game.
I was in the pool. I was in the
Great.
pool.
The great one, George Costanza, taught us all water shrinks things. And I think it shrunk our offensive line. It shrunk the pass rush, shrunk Sam Howell. And I think Eric Bieniemy's brain got shrunk a little bit on Sunday with the game plan. So anyway, I do think we weren't what we could be and what we should be last Sunday. But I will say this. The new owner is watching everything that you were talking about, Derek. He's watching kind of the same thing, the decisions that were made in the offseason. I'm quite sure he is aware that we went defensive backfield with the first 2 picks, even though everyone in the league would have pointed to our O-line as one of our weaknesses, including the fans. And I'm sure he's noticed that. And so that may be contributing to whatever decisions are made at the end of the year, depending on how it goes the rest of the way. I was probably the most disappointed in Eric Bieniemy's game plan. Although I did hear Rivera kind of confirm something I said last week about that they may be intentionally throwing Sam a little bit to the wolves with a super pass heavy offense, kind of like a trial by fire. I think that's what we should call the offense, is trial by fire, because they're putting him to the gauntlet, man, with all the pressure and some of that self-imposed. But I do think Rivera talked this week about like why he didn't sit him down is because they want to see him go through the growing pains. He's like on an accelerated quarterback school. I'm not saying they don't want to win these games, but I think developing him might even be a bigger priority, or figuring out whether he can be the guy this season might be a bigger priority than winning.
John,
Well, yeah,
if that's the case, I hope that's the case.
let's talk about that, right? Because we've talked about the OL already. We need to talk about Sam Howell, who I love what I've seen. I said this last week, that as of last week, I was pretty high on it. This week, after 3 straight weeks of many of the sacks being attributed to him, not by me necessarily, but by football people who do this for a living, we may have a problem there. He had sort of that problem in North Carolina, from what I understand, and 3 games in, what he's on pace to have through 3
David
games,
Carr.
he's been sacked more than anyone since David Carr in like modern recorded NFL history or whatever. He's not going to survive if he's going to have to protect himself better and get rid of the ball quicker. I think we'd all agree on that. The bigger issue that I'm having right now is, John, you're talking about if Ron and EB are getting together and saying, hey, let's throw this young guy out there. That's malpractice to me. And if that was their plan, who was it? It was the great 19th century Prussian field marshal Helmuth von Moltke the Elder famously said, everyone had the plan till they get punched in the mouth. Well, if that was our plan, we got punched in the mouth several times by Buffalo, and I had to go look up whether Buffalo even had a defensive coordinator. They don't. Sean McDermott apparently calls the plays for the defense and runs the D. He owned EB. If we had a game plan, it didn't work, and I didn't see that EB gave our quarterback and our team much help in winning that game. Did anyone else feel differently, that we saw adjustments and that the kind of things that we all expected going into the season, the short passes, the timing
we saw
stuff?
adjustments. We saw Brian Robinson run the ball for 14 yards on 2 carries on the first drive, and then it
Yeah,
seemed
I
like he
know.
didn't touch it again until the second quarter.
Well,
Well,
yeah,
we also got stuffed twice from the 1 yard line.
yeah.
I mean, so the running game, it's not like the running game every time we tried to run it was.
Brian Robinson had 10 carries for 70 yards.
I know, but and I said this on the board, I just think we need to keep in mind, if we had run it 30 times, after a while, they're going to start shutting that down.
I agree. And look,
it's not that simple, but
I said it in the chat. I said the only thing that I could come up with is that the enemy's playing chess. He's not playing checkers at this point, and that what we're watching now is not meant to matter in this game. It's meant to pay dividends in week 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, because this is like a glorified preseason game for him, where we're taking the first 4 or 5 weeks of this season, and he's finishing the implementation of the playbook and putting things in front of Sam Howell to try to develop him as a quarterback, because he won't be the same guy 10 weeks from now as he is now, right? Like, at least you hope not. That's called development.
No, he might be in the hospital.
That's true. He might not be the same guy because he might be missing a limb, or he's going to be the guy from, armless and legless asking for more. But
I don't understand why they didn't roll him out more, do more quick hitters.
That's what I'm talking about. Yes.
The first couple of series were a lot of quick hitters. We moved the ball down the field. And I mean, literally, like, they rolled him out once in the first half.
And we all clapped in the chat.
Why don't you keep doing that? I mean, for God's sake.
And we spent last week extolling their use of the screen. Did we run a screen on Sunday?
I don't remember one.
I don't remember seeing one.
I didn't.
That's my larger point. I didn't question EB. I thought, okay, it's a new thing. I was really surprised to see how we came out and approached that game and didn't seem to make the adjustments.
Has EB spoken to the press since the game? Because I've been looking for it and I haven't.
He was supposed to speak today. Wednesday's the day they speak. I haven't heard what he had to say though.
Yeah, I watched Howell's presser, and yet again, the young man seriously impressed me.
Yeah.
He's either just a kid of great character, or he learned a lot listening to Taylor Heineke last year. Heineke handled the press really, really well. He accepted a lot of the blame for the offense, and Sam is doing the same thing. I mean, Sam's basic thing is, look, I'm the guy with the ball. It's on me. Even if it's on somebody else, it's on me. Because I'm the leader, and he says all the right things, and he says it in a way that I find believable. And I don't know, John, I think it was you said it in chat after somebody posted the link to the presser, was that, you can't help but want to cheer for the kid. I mean, I've got friends down here in Dallas that are going, man, that Howell kid's something. They're watching him from afar and going, boy, he's really, he's a nice guy. You just want him to do well. And all right, I hurt a little bit every time he hit the deck on Sunday. I know a lot of people are looking at it and going, look at how long he's holding the ball. I want people to look at how long he's got when he hits the top of his drop, because he doesn't have much.
All true.
He doesn't have much. And I know Paul's itching to talk about it, so I'm going to open the can of worms and then hand it to Paul to talk about. But what hurt me the most on Sunday was watching Osiris Torrance stonewall our $84 million defensive tackle in Deron Payne. Payne's name was mentioned exactly once all day.
It was mentioned
in terms of a play, right? They kept talking about how great our defensive front was, and they would mention Payne when they would do that. But I didn't see the defensive front doing anything. And what I saw was a second-round draft pick that we could have had when we drafted a guy who does not appear in the box score this week, by the way, guys. Quan Martin's name is not in the box score for the Buffalo game. And I watched those Sirens Torrents destroy Deron Payne for 4 quarters. Go, Paul. Go.
I can't disagree with anything that you're saying, because I think I ended up mentioning that as well in the chat. I said my worst fear this Sunday would be if the guy that I was clamoring for to be picked would basically shut down John Allen and Deron Payne. You saw that come to fruition. But just to go back a bit, talking about Bieniemy and the offense, and throwing Howell to the Wolves and whatnot. Bieniemy's at about a 65% pass ratio at this point. We're throwing the ball roughly about 65% of the time. If you go back to his days in Kansas City, that basically mirrors what he did there. The fact of the matter is that I think that this is who Eric Bieniemy is, and we're just going to have to settle for that. I personally think you can develop Sam Howell and expose him to a lot, while also
not getting him killed,
leaning on your best assets. Yeah. I guess the big point with me, the thing that I'm frustrated about, is not running the ball is one thing, but not running the ball and arguably and simultaneously not using your best offensive asset is a totally another thing. Brian Robinson, to me, is our best offensive asset. And, we're throwing Howell to the Wolves, but at the same time, we're ignoring the guy that your offense can basically revolve around. Like, he's been the engine. When we've been clicking on offense this year, it's been driven by Brian Robinson. So I part of me does not get why you would ignore that.
a former running back ignoring it, by the
One
way.
thing that we've sacrificed by not being more of a run team is play action. I don't think anyone's worried about play action with this team right now. I heard an interesting stat today on something I was listening to, that we have had a number of 2nd and 10s throughout the first 3 games. We have yet to run the ball on a single 2nd and 10. Talking about when we pass on first down and get nothing at 2nd and 10, we have yet to run the ball on 2nd and 10, which leads to a lot of 3rd and longs, and our offensive line is not holding up on 3rd and longs.
Well, but it's also a tendency for the defensive coordinators. If we know that, good and well, Sean McDermott knew that on Sunday.
And I guarantee you the Eagles know that coming up this coming weekend.
Yes. I think I understand why they went after them in the air. I really do. And that's because they're looking at the same Pro Football Reference stats that we look at, and they're seeing that the Eagles are 5th in the entire league. The Bills are 5th in the entire league against the run, but they're not nearly as stout against the pass. But the problem is, once your quarterback starts getting thrown around like a rag doll, then that has to go out the window at some point, right? You have to say, we got to do something, change things up, because we're not getting enough time. It doesn't matter how good their defensive backs are and their safeties are if the quarterback is getting sacked before he can get the ball to anybody. So I understand why they went pass heavy, and that's a league-wide trend. I'm pretty sure the league-wide average is like 60% pass to rush. I know it is. Kansas City is more so, but that's not like an aberration. That's pretty much the norm now in the NFL. But you can't just stick to the plan. And that's why I want to hear from Bieniemy this week, because what I want to hear from him is, we want Sam to learn, and we're going to throw as much as we can at him. We're not just going to try to bubble wrap him, as I say, but we also don't want him to get killed, and we can't be effective if he's getting pressured so much that we can't be effective in the passing game, and we got to do some stuff differently. I don't want to hear about how he's a young kid and every situation is new to him. I want to hear him take the same kind of ownership that I'm hearing Hal take.
The Bills defense did to us what I think we were talking about in previous podcasts, and I've been saying how I would attack our team with a young quarterback is throw all kinds of I'm throwing crazy fronts at him. I'm bouncing people around. I'm faking blitzes and then dropping, and I'm seeing if the kid can read a defense. And they did that to us. They had the ability to do that to us. I think Arizona and Denver both tried to do that. They just didn't have the athletes that Buffalo does. Philly does have the athletes that Buffalo does on defense. And why would they do anything different? I think we're going to see all kinds of crazy fronts and people dancing. They're going to come from everywhere. And we better have an answer this week because we sure didn't have one against Buffalo.
Rewatching the game. I didn't rewatch the whole game. I rewatched the first half twice. I watched the condensed version to halftime, and then I watched the all 22 from the end zone from halftime. And one play really jumped out at me that just epitomizes what you're talking about, Mark. And it's the interception he was throwing. Howell was throwing to Gibson out there in the flat, and Hyde snuck up underneath the ball. Buffalo rushed 4, got home with 4. The fourth guy came unblocked because of the way they lined up at the offensive line and who dropped out. The entire right side of our line, 3 guys were blocking one dude because the overload came from the left-hand side and the defensive end was left completely unblocked when the offensive tackle picked up the blitzing safety, which is exactly what the offensive tackle is supposed to do, I would point out. I mean, Leno is going to take some flack over that from guys that don't necessarily know what they're talking about. But watching things and listening to professionals during the preseason, he did exactly what he was supposed to do. He took the inside man who has a shorter route to Howell and let the outside guy go free, which then becomes Howell's responsibility because there was no back in the backfield. And Howell tried to throw it over him and loop it out there to the running back. And I get why he did it, but that's not the point. The point is Buffalo brought 4 guys and got an interception out of it. We bring 4 guys every play. How many interceptions did we have?
Well, 1 on a deep ball.
Yeah, it was a 50-50. You know, I mean, it wasn't a great ball. I don't know.
How do we explain, Derek and Paul, how do we explain the D-line performance? Because that just stunned me. And I really feel like this is why people are snarky about Jack Del Rio at times, because how do you explain that one of the best D-lines in the league just gets totally nullified? I know Buffalo's a good team, but most people would probably put our D-line in the top 5 in the league, not based on last week, but just overall. I mean, we come into this game leading the league in sacks, and we looked like a bunch of scrubs out there. What do you guys?
Well, I can tell you. So, what I saw, Josh Allen. This is where Josh Allen has made his money. Like there was the throw to Diggs was something that there's maybe 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the league that can execute, and maybe 2 or 3 receivers in the league that can execute. He's rolling to his right, outrunning Montez Sweat, who runs a 4.40, by the way. And he just lollipops one at the exact right time that Diggs breaks his route and ends up with a 35-yard completion. 20 other starting quarterbacks get sacked. They're not able to elude that way. So I don't know that it's necessarily.
But that's one play, Derek. I guess my question is, yeah, we knew. I mean, we all would have said, yeah, they're gonna. I think Mark said they're gonna make their points. They're gonna score.
Honestly, I think a lot of it is the fact that I don't think we're using them right. I think Did you hear what
Rivera said? Did you hear Rivera
making this much money? Go win your matchup, and I don't think that's fair. Last week, I was elated to see Jamin Davis brought on a blitz. Like, holy shit! Let's use him as an edge defender. The guy's a physical freak. You know what I mean? Like, why are we not utilizing that? When our defense was at its best 2 years ago, when it was a top 5 or top 7 defense in the league, we saw Landon Collins coming on blitzes. We saw Kendall Fuller coming on blitzes. We saw Cam Curl coming on blitzes. I want to say there was a period where he shared the team lead in sacks, if I'm remembering correctly. And it seems like now we drop 8, rush 4, and just figure it out.
So my theory on this game, Derek, I don't think that Jack Del Rio went into this game asking his defensive line to do much other than
Right.
contain and try to keep Josh from scrambling, which he did and killed us anyway.
And
But I
that's
think
fair
this
because
game-
to your
Wait,
point,
wait,
there
it
was
was-
a play
They
we
played
put on the
scared.
board.
That's
Well,
a very
wait a
nice
minute,
way
wait a
to
minute.
say it.
Just we're talking just about our 4D linemen. I didn't go back and chart this, but
Right.
my impression watching the replay and watching the DL, the 4 guys were not pinning their ears back and going after Josh Allen. The few times they did, he'd step up and run for 15 or 30 yards or just roll out and hit somebody. I think Del Rio had his defense. I'm not agreeing with that he should have done this, but I don't think we didn't blitz people because he knew that was going to expose us more than the alternative. I think he wanted them to keep Josh in the pocket and try to cover and contain and bend and not break.
Which is
And
what I
worked.
said.
It worked for 3 quarters.
I
It
said,
did.
no, it didn't work for that long. I
It
said
did,
last
John.
week
It did. It
they
did
needed to
work.
get him dirty, and they did not get him
They
dirty.
didn't get to him. I'm not letting them off the hook, but I don't think they were asked to get after the quarterback. I think they were asked to contain the quarterback.
And to Mark's point, we gave up 16 points in 3 quarters.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean,
And what was the second touchdown? It was on a short field on
Well-
a 1-play drive, right? Because we had turned it over.
Right.
But the context is we haven't scored. We haven't scored a single point.
Well, that's not the
And you have
defense's
to look.
fault.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to be like airing it out trying to score when the other team can't do a damn thing. I mean, you have to put it in context.
Well, okay. I mean, that's fair. That's fair. I don't think the defense was our biggest problem on Sunday. I think the defense, and you're right, John, I did say going in, I thought that Buffalo would get 25 to 30 points, and their offense got 30 points. Now, they probably could have scored more if it had been a close game. But if our offense, think about it, when it was 16-0, we had a first and goal at the 6 at the beginning of the game and came away with nothing.
Mhm.
We had an interception from Sam in the corner of the end zone when it was 16-0. Those give us points on either one of those. Maybe it's 16-10, maybe it's 16-14 heading into the 4th quarter. We're not having the same conversation.
No,
I thought the defense did. I wasn't pleased, and I've got notes in here, by the way. I was ripping Jack Del Rio, saying you got nothing, you didn't contain the quarterback. I went back and watched it to try to be objective about it, and I feel a little better about the defense after that than I did before.
and to add to that, Buffalo had something on Sunday that we obviously don't have. I mean, they had balance. If you go look at the stats, Josh Allen had 3 rushes. Those were his 3 scrambles, right? So take those 3 and add them to his attempt totals, and he dropped back 35 times. They rushed 30 times without his 3 scrambles. That's a lot of balance, and they spread the ball around on those rushes too. I mean, granted, James Cook had 15 of them,
It's
but
easy.
nobody else had more than 5. They played a fairly balanced game. And why could they do that? Because
They were winning.
a shutout. Yeah, their defense was pitching a shutout.
Sam Howell averaged 18 yards per carry in that game.
But John's original point is it was, why did the defensive line disappear in this game, right?
Yeah.
And I think it did. And even though, to your point, Mark, and I agree with you that was the game plan, I don't agree with the game plan.
I'm not sure I do either, Derek. That's what I saw.
Maybe the players were executing the game plan that was installed, but then you look at it, and yes,
It's a good point.
they only scored 16
They're told
points.
to do certain things, stay in your lane, don't
Yeah.
let them out, etc. You can't really fault them at that point.
We blitzed a lot more against Russ Wilson, right? Because he's not going to hurt you running anymore.
But what really frustrates the living daylights out of me is that we watched the Jets beat them because they got into Allen's head and forced him to make mistakes, and we just sat back and hoped he would make mistakes.
Yes, that's my biggest issue. I would
I
much rather go down swinging than go down, playing zone, sitting back.
See, at the end of the day, I don't think that's who Jack Del Rio is. I think he talks a really good game about being hyper aggressive, I
He's
think
not.
he's
But
very
he
much
never
a
has been.
defensive coordinator who I'm going to throw a name out there. A lot of days our defense reminds me a bit of Richie Pettibone's defense, except not as good. And the reason behind that is Richie was the king of bend but don't break. He was the king of letting you have as many yards as you wanted as long as you didn't get in the end zone or get a field goal attempt. And it worked really well. I mean, there were days I got frustrated watching other teams run up and down the field, and then we'd take the ball away deep in, as they were trying to score a touchdown. And it was awesome, and it worked well with Gibbs' offense. But it doesn't feel like Del Rio has the same. Doesn't feel like he picks his moments for aggression as well as Pettibone did. The blitz would come out at just the right moment. Where was the blitz at all? I never saw anybody rush other than the 4 linemen. Did I miss it?
There was the one Cam Curl had a clean shot at
Oh, you're right.
the quarterback in the red zone, and he took
And
one
couldn't
step to the side and then ran uncontested in, because our blitzes don't tend to get home very often when we do bring them.
I think the bottom line is you don't beat a superior team by being conservative.
No.
You almost never do. If you want to beat a better team, and I think we'd all agree that Buffalo is way up here on the growth curve and we're somewhere down here. Maybe not pure talent wise, but in terms of where we are, you can't beat a better team by playing it safe and being conservative. It just doesn't happen that way. So I don't know what they were thinking on that front, but it is what it is.
I equate it to, and I'll say one thing and then shut up for a second, but I equate it to, we played not to lose as opposed to playing to win. I think playing conservative is playing not to lose.
Defensively, I agree with you. I don't think offensively, I think we were aggressive.
No,
as well.
Agreed, Mark. I'm talking about the defense. And I don't feel like you ever win unless your offense just goes out and puts up a shit ton of points. You don't ever win by the defense playing not to lose. Not in today's NFL.
The only other thing I want to bring up in regards to our conservative nature on defense is the following, and it's a point of frustration with me. This team went and invested their first 2 picks in this past April's draft in 2 defensive backs. I don't know a lot about football. I will be the very first to admit that. But to my simple mind, when you are investing that much capital into your defensive secondary, is a part of that not because you potentially want to be more aggressive and get after guys?
That's what
I don't see that happening. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's what Jack said he wanted. That's why he made the case for DB help, ball hawks. So
I just wanted to throw this out there because I saw it on social media from a couple of people, and this is reactionary, so I'm not endorsing it in any way, but I heard saw several social media posts saying this might be the worst draft of the Rivera era, because when you look across the board, it's like the person we are talking the most about is like Chris Rodriguez, who has barely played. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to make it. It's crazy to make any kind of statement like that yet, because Forbes may turn out to be the second coming. We just don't know yet. But I do think there are a lot of questions about it.
I think Forbes is going to be all right. That pick doesn't frustrate me. He actually had pretty good coverage on Diggs on that one play Derek was talking about earlier. Yep. And Josh Allen made the perfect throw. What was it? Was it Tom Landry that said, the one thing you can't defend is the perfect pass?
Dan Marino.
Yeah. And that ball was exactly where it had to be. And Diggs did everything he needed to do and made Forbes look bad. The reality is Forbes didn't look bad at all. He did everything he was supposed to do. He stayed with his man and was in pretty good position. My quandary is that second pick that Paul and I were talking about earlier. Because Torrance would have been lined up against who? Oliver. who made everything happen for the Buffalo defense on Sunday. It all started with Oliver. We had to figure out where he was and what he was doing. We had to stop him every single play, and that freed guys up in other areas. And I don't know. That part of it just pissed me off on Sunday, and when it all went back to the draft in April. So
we got our ass kicked, guys. I think we've probably said everything that is of any value to say. Do we want to jump in and talk about the big game on Sunday?
Yeah. And let's circle back to what we were saying at the very beginning. The only thing we learned for sure on Sunday is that we're not going undefeated in 2023.
True.
We have some new concerns that we didn't have. Is Eric Bieniemy going to be able to shift on the fly and adjust his plan in order to protect the young quarterback and give the team a chance to be competitive? And we're going to see if they bounce back. Coaching staff, attitude. If they get punched in the mouth early and they're down 10-0, and the Lincoln Financial Field is going nuts, what are they going to do? Are they going to stand up and punch back, or are we going to see sort of a collapse like we did in the fourth quarter? I think it's really early in the season. They don't have to win this game. They need to fucking compete in this game and show the hell up and prove to themselves and to us and everybody else. All right, we're here. We're 2-2. We're ready to move on. And they have of course they have a chance to win it. I will not be picking them because I think Philly may be the best team in football right now, although Miami might have something to say about that. They're very good. They're loaded. I think we should be able to be in the game and play like I expected us to play on Sunday. So this is a really, really big game for me.
So we've won 3 of the last 6 with Philly. We beat them the last meeting in Philly on Monday Night Football. For those that have dementia and don't remember that, 32-21, pretty convincing win. We sacked Hurts once. We forced 3 fumbles. That was pretty much the story of the game. And Joey Sly hit 4 field goals, 2 of which, one of was a 58-yarder, and then I think a 52 or 53-yarder. So that's how we did it the last time. So they have not owned us in any sense during the Ron Rivera era. Rivera's actually done a really good job of playing a tough Philly team close the last few years. So that's kind of the history of it. The big thing with Philly is their defense. They are second against the rush in the NFL. Excuse me. They're first against the rush in the NFL. They're 25th against the pass, which is interesting. On the offensive side, they're second in rushing yards and 23rd in passing yards. So they've got a hellacious rushing attack, and they're pretty good. They're as good as anyone in the league against the rush. So that's just the context of what we're facing.
I have a trivia question for you guys. When was the last time before Sunday that Washington gave up 9 sacks in a game?
Against Buffalo, probably. John Beck?
No.
That was 10 that day.
Don't remind me of that game, Mark. I was there.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Week 3 in Philadelphia, or week 3 at home to Philadelphia last year.
Carson
We
Wentz
got
under
beat.
center.
We got beat 24-8, and Philadelphia had 9 sacks.
Wasn't that the game where we looked great in the first half, and it looked like we were gonna just spank the hell out of them, and then
I think you may be right. That may be the game we came out kind of like a house on fire, and then it all evaporated.
The first quarter we were dominating, and then it kind of all went to.
Oh no, actually,
I think you're thinking of Detroit, John.
Yeah, it wasn't
That
Philadelphia.
might have been the previous year, but anyway.
Yeah, it was 0-0 at the end of the first quarter. Philadelphia put up 24 points in the second quarter and coasted through the second half.
They swept us the year before. And that might be the year that I'm thinking of, where we looked really good.
And I would argue that their defensive front has gotten better since that game.
When we beat them up there on Monday night, they went out the following week or something and brought in Ndamukong Suh off the street because we had gashed them in the middle.
Yep.
their two DTs are Fletcher Cox and this Jordan Davis monster out of Alabama. That's the kid, right? The rookie.
Mm-hmm.
No, Jalen Carter. I'm
Jalen
sorry. Who
Carter.
they have listed as behind Jordan Davis. Carter will be on the field. That
Did you guys
defensive
see?
line is stout.
Did you see Reed Blankenship in that game against the Bucks? That guy like took over the game, man. That guy scares the hell out of me. He's their safety. That kid is a monster, man. I mean, it's not just Fletcher Cox and some of the other guys they have. Josh Sweat. I think Josh Sweat and Fletcher Cox are the guys that have the most quarterback hits and sacks. But that safety, Reed Blankenship, a young guy, he dominated in that game, man. He scares me. He was like a God, I don't know who to compare him to. Did anyone watch the Bucks game?
I did not.
No, I did not.
I was going to research them, but I ran out of time.
You know, the one guy I think we've got to lean on this week, looking at last year, McLaurin gashed him for 230 yards in 2 games last year. He just positively, you know, did a number on their secondary. He's been very quiet this year. Part of that's because Sam Howell's done a lot of sitting on his butt. You know, but we've got to figure out how to get Terry involved in the game this week.
So I want to ask Paul a compelling question. I'll put Paul on the spot. So because we beat on them, right? We do beat on them for not running, and because of the valid things that Paul brought up about Brian Robinson and just the whole balance thing. But when you're coming off the loss we just had, and you've got a defense that is first against the run in Philadelphia and 25th against the pass, is it wrong if Eric Bieniemy goes in there and says, we're going to go air Coryell on them because I don't think we can run on them enough to win, to be successful. I mean, how do we react to, or is that wrong logic or what?
To be honest with you, John, I would do a lot of exactly what we did last year in Philadelphia against them. We ran the ball 44 times against them. And if you look at the stat line, Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson did not have a huge per carry average. I think they each averaged about 3.5, 3.4, 3.3 yards per carry in that game. But we were just patient enough with it and consistent enough with it that we put ourselves in a lot of third and manageable situations, a lot of third and shorts. And one of Sam Howell's strengths to me this year has been his ability to connect in a short passing game and have some pretty decent accuracy with some short throws. I think you have to put this kid in a very hostile environment. You have to put him in situations where he doesn't feel as though he has to press. Get him in those 3rd and 5s, get him in those 3rd and 6s, hit McLaurin on some of those underneath throws, and I think we'll be okay. But to come out and, you know, just go all out air attack against these guys, given Howell's propensity to hold on to the ball a bit too much, I don't think that will play to our favor. I mean, I think in a certain regard, I think the Eagles are sitting there praying that, you know, we put Howell in situations where he's dropping back and holding on to that ball and looking for receivers and looking for deep routes to develop. That's going to play right into their hands. So to me, just be patient with the run, be happy with those 2-3 yard carries and put yourself in 3rd and shorts and give yourself a chance. That's how I see it personally, for right or wrong.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, first of all, you're controlling the clock, right? You're not giving them, you're limiting the possessions they have theoretically if you're running the ball more. We didn't mention one name, which again, go back and watch at least the first half of the Philly game against the Bucks. DeAndre Swift, that guy scares the living hell out of me. That guy looks like Barry Sanders being shot out of a cannon. There was one play against the Bucks where I have never seen a running back hit a hole. Now, the hole was as big as a semi-trailer. Don't get me wrong. I could have run for 10 or 15 yards through the hole that Philly blew through the Bucks defense. But DeAndre Swift, man, that kid, he's averaging 6 yards per carry. That kid is the real deal, and he scares the hell out of me. They don't pass to him, but man, when he has the ball in his hands, it is scary. It's scary stuff.
Well, and as we saw in the week before, they didn't have a drive where they ran it 14 times in a row or something. Sirianni will do whatever the hell he needs to do in a game. We are going to need to be a little more aggressive. I don't think we're just going to contain Jalen Hurts. We're going to have to go after him. And we're going to need, we haven't even really talked about Chase Young other than to mention the one jogging. It's not the only time I saw him sort of jogging around the field or wandering around in the secondary, not really doing much of anything that I could tell. I'm not sure what the hell is going on in his head right now, but I'm kind of done with it, to be honest with you. I just kept waiting. He made a couple of tackles and he just never looks like his hair is really on fire, you know, like DeAndre Swift looks like his fucking hair is on fire when he runs. We got our hands full this week.
Remember a couple of seasons ago where we had a lot of discussion around the defense looks better when Chase isn't in there? And I had that vibe last week.
I don't know how, yeah. I mean, he didn't really add a whole hell of a lot, right? Anyway, yeah, we don't want to get bogged down in that. We do need to, I mean, the whole season was going to be about seeing if we have a quarterback, right? This is a big game for Sam Howell. He needs to show that his head is on straight. I'd like to see that he and EB have clearly spent some time mapping out some answers for when Philly does exotic defensive things, that Sam has some simple answers that don't involve him trying to do 3 or 4 reads. I'd like to see him get out and use his legs a little bit more, actually on called quarterback draws and runs to try to get some honesty. We didn't see any of that. The one run he had on a scramble was pretty brilliant until he got his ass kicked at the 5-yard line.
Bob was screaming naked bootleg down on the goal line. And I have that same concern. It's like, good, for God's sake, you've got a mobile quarterback down on the goal line, put them in a quandary, man. Roll him to the cone and either make them tackle him or give him a chance to find somebody on the run. I don't understand why they just don't seem like they're leveraging what the guy does really well at times.
Isn't it interesting that now when we talk about coaches, I had this thought earlier, and I'm sorry to jump in on something a little bit off tangent, but we've talked a lot about the enemy. We've talked about Jack Del Rio. Who haven't we talked about? The head coach of our team, who's just, I don't know, kind of there, right? He does not seem to have this team all pulling on the same rope. To me, it's still in year 4. I guess this is his personality, right? He's a really nice guy. I just don't see a whole lot of head coaching going on when things get tough. And maybe that's not fair, but it's not the first time I felt that way watching this team on games when they just don't quite look like they're up to speed.
There was a point during the game on Sunday where the commentators were talking about interviews with the Buffalo players and how they felt closer to the head coach this year because he was in defensive meetings. He was working on defensive stuff. He was calling plays. And one of the guys said, you know, a lot of times head coaches end up a little divorced from what's going on with the players because there's so many administrative things they've got to take care of and whatnot, which got me to thinking, look at the guys that are the most successful in the NFL right now. And a lot of those guys are still highly involved in one side of the ball. You know, Bill Belichick has been his own defensive coordinator several times in the last 10 years. And even in the years when he's not, he's heavily involved in installing the defensive side of the game plan. Andy Reid.
Miami. Look at Miami, man.
Mike McDaniel. Although, you know, he had fans calling plays on Sunday, apparently. So, you know, that's the only
when
thing.
You're up by 62. I don't care who the hell calls the next play.
That's true. but you know, I just got to thinking about it. I'm like, the better head coaches in the league right now seem to still be largely plugged in on one side of the ball or the other. Kyle Shanahan, very much involved in the San Francisco offense. So Sean McVay, very involved in the offensive side of the game plan at the Rams. Look at the last few teams that have won the Super Bowl. And our head coach is utterly divorced from both sides. He has ceded control of everything that happens on the field to his coordinators, offense, defense, and special teams.
But do we want him involved?
I don't know whether I want him involved or not, Derek, but I can tell you what's going on right now does not appear to be working to me.
I just don't know
Okay,
what
but it
he
hasn't
has.
worked for 4 years under it. Look, not to harp on something, just to looking back, every quarterback we've had, and this goes beyond Rivera, this goes back all the way to RG3. What's the knock that they've had on them? They hold the ball too long, they can't escape pressure, they can't read defenses. We have heard this literally 20 times. Every
Right.
quarterback we've ever invested in, especially under the Ron Rivera era. What was the biggest knock against Dwayne Haskins? Rest in peace. He can't read defenses. He holds the ball too long, and he takes unnecessary
Look,
sacks.
It was a Dan Snyder pick.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
but
make this. I'm gonna make this easy. A real strong head coach after the second interception goes over to Eric Bieniemy and says, "Run the fucking ball." Not like that's what we're gonna do the rest of this game. We're gonna pound it down their throats and run the ball until they show they can stop it. And I think that's the part that where Rivera's always been a little bit. Just his reputation as an in-game coach is not great. And I mean, I don't know how afraid other opposing coaches are of a Ron Rivera team. I don't.
Yeah, I don't know what he adds to the mix, right? It's EB's offense, it's Del Rio's defense. What exactly is Ron Rivera adding to the mix at this point? It's a rhetorical question. I'm sure he's doing something, but it sure isn't showing up on the field on Sunday.
I had to laugh. Somebody asked Rivera, I think it was last week during his coaching stuff, and I read this, I didn't hear it. So I have no vocal or facial context to go with what I read in print. Please understand that, because it may mean something. There may be a whole different subtext that I'm not picking up on when you read it in print, right? But somebody asked him about, letting EB take over the practices and stuff. And Rivera said, I'm here to mentor the young man. And I thought, everything good I've heard coming out of a training camp this year was EB, not you or Del Rio. Who's mentoring who? Who's doing the work?
Well, and what has he ever done to prove that he deserves to mentor? What quarterback has he mentored?
Who was the
And-
offensive coordinator, John, when Cam was in Carolina? Do you remember? Was it Ron's offense?
No,
Probably not, right?
No.
it was Ron's defense.
Norv was there for a while
Yeah.
before Scott.
That's right.
But the last year it was Scott Turner kind of as a brand new guy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know
think,
who it was
I mean,
the
I think
year
it's
they
a
went to
valid.
the Super Bowl.
I take heart, like I said, guys. I take heart I think that Josh Harris is seeing everything that we're seeing, and probably is well aware of like what the shortcomings have been in the previous seasons. And again, it's not like none of us, we all have the utmost respect for Ron Rivera, and we've talked about that ad nauseum about he brings a lot of positives to the table, and God help us, or God help him during the first 3 years. He weathered a lot of bullshit, probably a lot more bullshit than we'll ever be aware of with the owner. So he gets a big pass on that front. But as far as being a head football coach, especially in game, I don't know that he's like in the top half of the league.
How about a week 3 survey? Does anyone here right now think Ron Rivera is the head coach on opening day in 2024?
Nope.
I don't.
I don't either. So maybe this is all just.
Paul, what do you think? Does he survive?
No, absolutely not. Like in-game decision making, as you've already alluded to, has just it's been atrocious at times. Like you saw evidence of that in the Buffalo game. I mean, we're struggling to put points on the board. He goes for it on 4th and 2 on like the 2-yard line. Like your rookie I'm calling him a rookie quarterback. Your quarterback in his 4th career start. Give the kid some momentum and something to build on, right? Put the points on the board at that point, and see what happens from there. But I mean, that's just a small example. But again, the team's not closing the gap. I said this at the beginning. We're not closing the gap with the top teams in the league. We still feel like that 7-8 win team, and to me, there's no point in continuing that process with them if you don't see an upward trajectory for our club. So absolutely not. I do not want him back.
I think EB's got a better chance of being the head coach in Washington than Ron Rivera next season.
And that job interview probably really starts for real Sunday. I would like to see, and I bet you Josh Harris would like to see an answer. Let's see something to answer what happened on Sunday and show that, okay, that was an anomaly and this is who we really are.
And especially, and you know that I like Sam Howell is my love child, you know that, but Sam Howell, all we've heard all year long is like, he never makes the same mistake twice. He learns from an experience and then he figures out how to do better the next time. So I'm looking hard at Sam Howell. Even though he is essentially a rookie, I think that's going to be a big telltale sign. Like, does he change his decision making, take it up a notch against Philly, who is 25th against the pass? So they are not like a juggernaut against the pass. So I'm looking for, again, not necessarily a win, but I agree. I think we need to see something from him this weekend.
In concert with his offensive coordinator, the two of them need to work together to be competitive. Just fucking be competitive. Don't kill yourselves. Don't be deer in the headlights, and don't keep doing the same things over and over when they don't work, which is what we saw on Sunday for the first time this year. I'm not trying to indict them for the first 2 weeks. I thought we did make some nice changes in the first 2 weeks. I didn't see anything change against Buffalo.
I do want to add, then, Mark, just to piggyback on them, Mark, hypothetically speaking, and of course, we'll never actually know the answer to this question, but what if there is something to the fact that Bieniemy's play calling is not about week 3 or week 4? It is throwing him for lack of a better term, throwing him to the fire, getting him the reps, getting him involved in the playbook, helping him see the playbook in live fire action, doing those things because it will pay dividends 10 weeks from now, not now. So, hypothetically speaking, are you more interested in us handcuffing Howell this weekend for a quote unquote chance at trying to just stay in the game? Or would you rather him continue on the trajectory he's on now if it means that as we go further, he's better off for it?
I don't think that's an either or, Derek. I'd like to see a combination of both of those things. I'd like to see us continue to ask Sam to be an NFL professional quarterback, but I'd also like our offensive coordinator and head coach to try to do that within the context of a workable game plan to be competitive on a team that has enough talent to be a playoff team. I don't want to write off the season, and the fucking other guys in the locker room don't want to write off the season while we see if this kid can play only. We need that, but we also need to be competitive. I think both of those things have to happen at the same time.
To address the question directly, Derek, I think adjustments are part of the learning curve. Adjustments to the offense in game are part of the learning curve. And if a defense has your offense figured out, is your quarterback really learning anything by continuing to run plays that the defense can diagnose and beat? I don't think that's helpful to Sam Howell at all. But maybe that's me. Eric Bieniemy has forgotten more about football and coaching quarterbacks than I will ever know. I freely admit that. But I just look at it and I'm like, if we're not adjusting to what they're doing, then we're not actually putting Sam in a position to be successful. We're asking him to do the same thing over and over again, knowing that Buffalo knows how to beat it, knowing that potentially Philadelphia knows how to beat it. That's not fair.
I guess
Well, I'm just speaking hypothetically here, but
I guess the counter argument is everyone wants to I threw David Carr's name out there. That's one example, but there are other examples of quarterbacks who got thrown out there, asked to start when they probably weren't ready, and got pummeled, got the ever-loving shit kicked out of them and embarrassed numerous times. And some of the names of those guys are guys like Troy Aikman, Peyton Manning. So I just think it's all about who is the young man. That's what we're going to find out, right? Who is the young man? Does he really have what it takes to weather the terrible performances and be able to figure it out? And will the game speed up for him? We hear a lot about that, about how, or will the game slow down for him, I guess is a better way to put it. Will he be able to like adjust to the speed of the NFL and process things quicker? And I mean, whether, I don't know, can we see that this season? I would hope so. If we're putting him out there and taking the kind of punishment that he's taking, I would hope we would start seeing some development and change, you know, in the next 4 or 5 games. And by the end of the year, be able to say, yeah, it was worth it. Yeah, we threw him to the wolves and we put him under a lot of pressure, but look where he is now compared to the beginning of the season. So
Derek, you asked the question. What do you go ahead and answer it too?
Yeah.
no, I was just throwing it out hypothetically. I hope that's what's going on. I hope that that's the only justification I can see for what position he's been put in. Is that maybe it is more beneficial for him to drop back and see a failing play and learn from it than to not be able to see it as he develops as a quarterback. Now, that is some extreme deep level, you know, almost borderline tinfoil hat conspiracy theory on our offensive game plan, and that is not lost on me. But I also don't. Here's what I don't want to do though. If Eric Bieniemy has spent the last 6 months implementing an offense and building an offensive game plan and strategizing an offense around a certain level or a certain thought process or a certain schematic mentality, what I don't want to do is see the team panic and pull the plug on that in week 3 when we got dominated by a team that was clearly better than we are. Okay, because I don't, that we've seen that happen. We've seen that happen too many times being a fan of this team where we think we have something and we're going in one direction and then it comes off the rails and everything. No. Week 3, we got beat by a team that was better than us. Week 4, we're going into another game with a team that is probably better than us because between the two of them, they have been in the championship game for their respective conferences at least twice over the last 3 seasons, correct?
Yeah, these are 2 top 5 teams.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a measuring stick, but what you don't want to do is look at the way that you get beat by a team that is on a different level than you are and try to change your team to around that defeat. Okay. If our game plan and the game plan that Bieniemy has been building to this point is to run the ball 35 to 40% of the time, pass the ball 60% of the time, utilize the tight ends, the running backs, the receivers, Curtis Samuel, pick your poison as an extension of the run game while we're not handing it off, but they're essentially playing a similar part. I don't want to see us panic and say we have to change everything, especially going into a short week against an inferior team, right? Because after this, we play Philly this weekend. Then we're on a short week because we play Chicago at home on Thursday night.
So Philly's on a short week this week, by the way.
Right.
Just to keep that in mind.
I don't want to see that panic and then try to see Ron Rivera say, run the dang ball, Bert, and then them try to change the offense when we've only got a practice and a half before we go against a team that I think all 5 of us are going to pick us to beat because of the utter turmoil they're in. And if you look, we have Chicago, then we have almost a mini
Giants.
bye week, right? And then what?
I think it's the Giants after
And then
Chicago.
the Giants, and then we've got 2 games that are winnable games coming in, and I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I'm just going on memory. If we can find our way to not freak out, you know, maintain an offensive course and be 4-3 after week 7, I think we would all take that. But what I don't want to see is us freak out, change the offense, do everything we can do to quote unquote protect Hal, and it end up costing us a game we shouldn't lose, if that makes any sense.
The next 3 weeks after Philadelphia, for the record, we got Chicago here, then we're at Atlanta,
Atlanta.
and then we're at the Giants before the Eagles come to town again in week 8. So
we're 2-1 now. If we can go 2-1 over the next 3 weeks, if we can go 2-2 over the next 4 weeks, including Philly, we're talking about a 4-3 football team, then playing Philly. You know what I mean? I think
it's all
nobody would
there.
complain about that.
It's all there. We just need to make sure that what happened last Sunday against Buffalo was not a sign that they
Right, the wheels are coming off.
Right. Yeah. It's just let's see them bounce back and punch back a little bit better this week.
So prediction time, boys.
Yep. Take it away, John.
Well, here's the only reason. Rationally, there's no reason to pick us against Philly at Philly after last week. There's no rational reason to do it, but I'm going to pick us by a single point. I'll call it 31-30.
Oh, we're gonna hang 31 on Philly. Oh, I love you.
31-30. I have no idea how we'll get to 31, but I think it's a pride game for us. We got our ass kicked and embarrassed last week across multiple levels, as we've documented. And the only reason I'm picking us is because I responded to a poll on BGO. What would our record be going into week 5? And I said 3-1. So I am going to be consistent and say, well, we didn't get it done against Buffalo, so we must beat Philly, because God knows I can't be wrong about our record going into week 5. So we're going to win by the slimmest possible margin and shock the world.
Really? Okay. That was a big long silence.
I'll go. I'll take it. All right. I have no confidence that we're going to win. I think we're going to see a lot of the same things we saw this past week, and I think that's okay. Or I shouldn't say okay. I think that's to be expected. I think we're showing we failed to address the offensive line. We failed to address the linebacking core. I think we're just not on the level of this team the same way we aren't on the same level as Buffalo. I'm thinking it similar score to Buffalo, but maybe not as bad because it's a division opponent. I'll say it's going to be I'll say 30-13. And it stings me to say that, because I will be praying I'm wrong. But Eagles 30, Washington 13.
Paul, what is the view from the north?
So I'm gonna have to hop on board with Derek for this one, sadly. I expect it to be like a 34-10 type game, but whenever I expect it to be that bad, this team typically surprises us a bit. So I think we'll play an improved brand of football. We'll keep it relatively close, but the fact is we're entering week 4. We have 3 brand new starters on our offensive line. If you factor in Cosme playing a brand new position as well, you can basically say, hey, there's almost like 4 new starters on our offensive line. And they're going up against a really talented defensive front. I mean, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, you name it. It's going to be too much to handle on the interior for us. 26-14, Philadelphia.
I don't believe that This one's going to be hard to watch for one specific reason. I think we are going to lose the battle on the line of scrimmage badly on both sides of the ball. It's the best offensive line in football up in Philadelphia. It's DeAndre Swift. I think the Eagles are going to play keep away, and I think we're going to have a hard time getting them off the field. I don't know that they're going to run up a lot of points. They may kick a lot of field goals like they've been doing. And I think offensively they're quicker than we are right now. And I think defensively their defensive line is really, really stout. And the interior of their defensive line with the rookie and I've already forgotten all the names, but they are maybe the strongest in the league other than Payne and Allen, right? If there's anyone else on that level, it's what Philly has. And they're going against the interior of our offensive line, which I'm not feeling all that great about right now. So I don't think it's going to be a scoreboard blowout, but I think it's going to be a war of attrition, and it's going to end up being like a 27-16 kind of game or something like that. Which, frankly, guys, if we are competitive and simply are beat by a better team in a competitive football game, I'm really okay with that. I won't be okay with seeing us just kind of get embarrassed and outclassed from coaching on down like we did on Sunday.
I'm less. We've spent a lot of time tonight beating on the coaches. What I'm looking for Sunday is a certain level of professional pride amongst the players. I'm looking at guys like Cosme and Leno and John Allen and Montez Sweat to stand up and go, I got embarrassed last week, and I'm not doing it this week. It's not happening this week. I have to respond to this, and I have to be better than this. Sam Howell had to sit in front of the media today and answer questions, and he said all the right things. I would like to think that those four guys, plus a whole bunch of other guys on both the offense and the defense, are thinking the same thing to themselves this week that Sam Howell said in front of the media today, that they have to be better. They can only run the play that the coaches call. You know, I mean, let's face it, the days of players actually doing it themselves are long over. Professional football is a game of chess run by masters standing on the sideline, and they have pieces on the board. I want to see the pieces win their individual matchups. That's what I'm looking for, and I'm kind of counting on that a little bit. I don't expect to win. I expect to lose. I expect it to be a pretty good game, and I'm going to call it 27-21. The difference is two Philadelphia field goals. You know, where they just get a little closer than we get. So
before we sign off, I just want to mention, I wish you guys had watched that Bucks game, because the Bucks could easily have won that game.
Oh, I watched it.
What I saw was the Eagles making mistake after mistake, unforced penalties, Jalen Hurts giving the ball up with stupid passes. And if Baker Mayfield doesn't have the worst game of the year, which I know that doesn't happen in isolation, but if he plays even just above average, they're in that game down to the wire. But they pissed it away every chance they got. That the Eagles fucked up and gave them an extra series, or made a mistake, or made a dumb penalty. The Bucks handed it right back to them. So I'm not a believer. We've won half of the last 6 games we played against them. It's an NFC East division game. I'm just saying it might be better than we think. I've been made an
But
ass.
look, Philly wasn't that impressive against New England either.
No, but they're one of the favorite children of the NFL, so they're always going to be painted as an unbeatable foe, and maybe they will be on Sunday. But I look for us to bounce back. I hope so.
John, brother, I hope you were right. I hope I will eat crow.
I'll-
Big old plate of it right on here on this podcast next week.
Happily.
and I will say I don't know what I was thinking. It doesn't work out that way.
All right,
All right,
gents.
gents, this is our first bitter pill to swallow since the sale of the team, you know.
That's right.
But isn't it nice that we spent a podcast talking about football, all
Straight
football?
We've
We're not
spent
talking about all the
four
other shit.
podcasts talking about just straight football.
Yeah. So that's a big win right there.
It is. All right, brothers.
Hi, guys.